In a vacuum, I'd tell you, this game sucks. Then again, everything gets sucked in a vacuum. You see, because phrases for context instead of nouns for household products. Nonetheless, this isn't just some game. This is a game based on Game of Thrones, which is evidently a popular television show. It's based on a book or something. I have no idea. Anyway, the Game of Thrones realm is what gives this game whatever positive attributes it might have. Emphasis on might, because if you're not a fan, you won't care in the slightest. Game of Thrones is an old-school action RPG that unfortunately also looks like an old-school action RPG. You control a small group of characters who are evidently from the show, although upon asking those who actually watch it, I was told they don't even really look the same, and that's one of this thing's biggest problems. Here you have a game that emphasizes this elaborate Game of Thrones story, but, can't be bothered with presenting that world or its characters with any degree of polish. Now, some of the environments look okay, but that's the highlight of Game of Thrones in terms of its presentation. And all this stuff takes a pretty serious toll on the game. Your characters change throughout the game to follow different story arcs, but in general, you're always in control of a small group. And the combat is actually kind of interesting. Attacks sort of play out by themselves, with players making commands. And when enemies approach, you bring up an attack menu that, essentially slows time, while you strategically choose which character and abilities to use. And it all sounds kind of cool, but in practice, it's kind of just a pain in the ass. You end up relying on the same stuff over and over, and then you wait for the next fight, which is always forever away because the game's so story-driven. And if you're a fan of the show, you'll love that. Game of Thrones feels more like an interactive movie than a game with a story, but it's actually well done. In fact, the only thing holding it back is its presentation and some of its delivery. And ultimately, that's the thing with Game of Thrones. If you're a fan who's okay with a below-average video game with an above-average story, this thing's worth checking out. Otherwise, keep your sword in its sheath.